The hallway lights flickered as I passed the break room. Someone had spilled something, maybe coffee, maybe wine, and it soaked into a stack of napkins on the floor like a crime scene waiting for context. I should have turned around right then. I should have just walked back toward the music, grabbed a drink I didn't want, and pretended everything was normal. But I didn't. I kept walking, drawn toward that corner office like it had its own gravity. No one else was in that part of the building, too far from the party, too quiet. And the music, thumping just minutes ago, was now only a muffled suggestion in the walls. I could hear my shoes squeak on the tile. Then I heard it. A short, clipped laugh, hers. That was followed by a whisper. A man's voice. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone made the skin on my arms tighten. The door was closed, but the blinds on the side window weren't fully shut. Just a sliver, but enough. I took 2 steps forward, carefully, quietly. I didn't know what I expected to see. Maybe her checking her phone, maybe nothing. But what I saw, her shoes were off. That wouldn't have meant anything, if not for the way she sat, not in a guest chair, but perched on the edge of a desk, knees slightly turned inward, fingers toying with something in her lap. She wasn't laughing anymore. She was listening. Closely. Too closely. He stood in front of her, too close for a friendly chat. His hand was on the desk, not touching her, but angled just enough that if she leaned forward another inch. I stepped back. Fast. Too fast. My heel tapped the wall behind me, and the sound echoed down the hallway like a shotgun. Silence. Her head turned. I froze. The office door didn't open. No one called out. But the light under the door seemed to grow hotter somehow, like it knew I was there. I backed away, heart pounding, breath short, mind screaming things I couldn't sort out. I wasn't ready to leave. Not yet. But I couldn't face that room either. So instead, I walked into the dark conference room across the hall, shut the door behind me, and waited. That's when I got the first message. From her. And it said something so normal, so perfect, it made me want to scream. Everything okay? Smiling face with smiling eyes. I stared at that message on my screen like it was written in a foreign language. Everything okay? Smiling face with smiling eyes. The smiling emoji at the end felt surgical, like she had cut through the tension of the last 10 minutes with a perfectly placed blade. She had no idea I was right across the hall. Or maybe she did. That thought hit harder than I expected. I didn't respond right away. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, trying to decide what version of me I should be tonight. The easygoing husband who trusts too much, or the version that had just seen her without shoes, laughing like she wasn't married. I typed, yeah, and deleted it. Then, almost home, deleted. Finally, I just turned off the screen. The conference room was too cold. The kind of cold that sinks into your joints and reminds you how alone you really are. I stood there for a while, arms folded, watching the shadows from outside move across the frosted glass. Somewhere in the distance, someone laughed again. Not her this time. A different voice, deeper, louder. Then a burst of music, then silence again. This building felt haunted. I opened the door slowly and peeked out into the hallway. Empty. Her boss's office door was now closed all the way. No light under it. No voices. Just nothing. As if it had swallowed its own secret and gone still. I walked toward the elevator, pretending I had a destination. But my feet stopped on their own, right in front of that door. My hand hovered over the handle, not to open it, just to feel the weight of it. Solid, heavy. Locked, I guessed. That's when her second message came through. Just stepped out for a sec. Elliot's showing me something hilarious, face with tears of joy. I read that 3 times. Something about the wording, just stepped out, felt wrong. I had just seen her sitting inside his office. I saw it. Her feet. Her posture. His arm. Why say she stepped out? It could have been innocent. I know that. I tried to tell myself that. But here's the thing. Clara doesn't lie about small things. She's the type of person who will correct herself mid-sentence if she gets a detail wrong, even when no one cares. So why lie about that? I typed back. Cool. I'll head out. Let me know when you're done. I didn't leave. Instead, I took the stairs. 3 floors up, to the rooftop garden I knew they used for staff lunches and after-hours drinks. It was almost always unlocked, and I needed air. I needed a vantage point. I needed to be somewhere that didn't smell like perfume and cheap white wine and lies. The door creaked as I stepped onto the roof, and the night hit me like a slap. The city spread out below, lights blinking like they didn't care about anything happening inside that building. I stood by the edge and gripped the railing, thinking I'd wait 5 minutes, then go home, then pretend I hadn't seen what I saw. But then I heard it again. Not laughter, a snap, like someone dropping something hard onto concrete. And when I turned around, I saw the rooftop door hadn't closed all the way. It was slowly drifting open behind me. The door creaked wider with a slow, reluctant groan, and for a moment I didn't move. I just stood by the edge of the rooftop, heart hammering like it was trying to tell me something before my brain could catch up. I wasn't sure if the wind had pushed it open or if someone had followed me. Either way, I was suddenly hyper-aware of every sound, every shadow. I took a step back from the ledge and angled myself toward the doorway, keeping my movements slow, deliberate. Nothing came through. No voice. No footsteps. Just silence and that open rectangle of black, like a mouth waiting to speak. "Clara?" I said it barely above a whisper, instantly hating myself for how needy I sounded. I cleared my throat and said it again, louder this time. "Clara?" Still nothing. But then something moved, just a flicker of light catching on fabric, barely visible behind the doorframe. I squinted, took one cautious step forward, and a figure emerged. Not her. It was the intern. Maddie, I think her name was. I had seen her once at a company picnic, young, nervous, always carrying someone else's coffee. She looked startled to see me, more than startled. Her face was pale, her eyes wide like she'd been caught stealing something. "Oh," she stammered, hugging herself. "Sorry, I didn't know anyone else was up here." I forced a thin smile. "Yeah, just needed some air." She nodded quickly, too quickly. "Me too." We stood there for a long beat, both of us pretending the other didn't look suspicious. She kept glancing back at the door, fidgeting with the sleeves of her sweater like she wanted to say something but couldn't. I wasn't in the mood for small talk, but the tension hanging between us was unbearable. "Everything okay?" I asked. "You look like you saw a ghost." Her mouth opened, closed. Then she whispered, "Did you hear anything?" I blinked. "Hear what?" "In the office. Before," she said, stepping a little closer, her voice barely audible now. "You were down there, right? Near Elliot's office?" I didn't answer. I didn't have to. She lowered her voice even more. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. But they were in there for a while. I was dropping off folders and I heard something. "What kind of something?" She hesitated, biting her lip. "Voices. Loud ones. A thud, like something hitting the desk. Or someone." The hair on my neck stood up. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice dry. She nodded slowly. "I know what I heard." We were both silent again, the air between us heavy with implication. I wanted to believe she was wrong, that it was just some misunderstanding. But the gnawing in my gut told me she was probably right, and that I was nowhere near ready for the truth. Suddenly, Maddie's phone buzzed. She looked down, and I caught the flash of a message on her lock screen. Her face drained even further. "I have to go," she said quickly. "Please don't say I said anything. Seriously." And before I could ask her a single question, she bolted, not through the rooftop door, but around the far side of the building, toward the emergency stairs. I stood there alone again, trying to process what had just happened, when my phone buzzed too. Another message from Clara. "Babe, where are you? The party's winding down. I can't find you anywhere, see no evil monkey." My stomach twisted. She was texting like nothing had happened. Like the last 20 minutes hadn't peeled back a layer of something rotting underneath our life. I looked at the message for a long time before typing a reply. "Still around. Thought you were with Elliot?" 3 dots appeared. Then they disappeared. Then nothing. No reply. I stared at the screen long after the typing bubbles disappeared. It's strange how silence can say more than words. She had read the message. She had started to type, and then stopped. I wanted to believe it was just bad signal, or that someone called her away. But deep down, I knew better. Clara always finishes her sentences, especially when she's guilty. I stayed on the roof for another 5 minutes, maybe more, just listening to the city below like it could somehow give me clarity. It didn't. Everything sounded too alive, too loud, too far from the mess that was growing silently behind those polished corporate walls. I finally walked back down the emergency stairs, each step echoing like a countdown in my head. When I re-entered the main floor, the party had clearly shifted gears. The music was lower, the bar was closed, and people were beginning to collect their coats. The fake laughter had thinned out. I scanned the room, expecting to spot Clara talking to someone or maybe pretending to look for me. But instead, I found her sitting alone on a low bench by the windows, scrolling through her phone like she hadn't just vanished 20 minutes ago. Her heels were back on. Her lipstick had been touched up, not a single strand of hair out of place. She looked perfect. Too perfect. When she saw me, her face lit up, too quickly, too wide. Like she'd been rehearsing the expression and couldn't wait to use it. "There you are," she chirped, standing up and throwing her arms around me. "I thought you left." I didn't hug her back right away. I was too busy trying to process her tone. It was light, cheery, and oddly performative. Not a trace of the slight edge that usually came when I questioned her about something. No defensiveness. No guilt. Just sunshine. "I was just getting some air," I said quietly. "Up on the roof." She blinked. "The roof? Why?" I needed a minute. She tilted her head. "Everything okay?" It was a trap, the way she asked that. If I said yes, I'd be lying to both of us. If I said no, I'd be opening a door I wasn't sure I could close again. Instead, I asked, "Where were you?" She smiled again, this time with that tightness around her eyes she gets when she's calculating. "Oh, Elliot was showing me this ridiculous slideshow from his ski trip. Total disaster. He broke his wrist the first day and spent the rest of the trip drinking whiskey by the fireplace." We were cracking up. I nodded slowly. "You weren't in his office?" Her smile froze for half a second. She recovered fast, but I saw it. That tiny stutter in her expression. Most people would have missed it. But I've known her too long. "No, we were in the break room for most of it," she said quickly. "I think we popped into his office for, like, a second to grab something." "Why?" I shrugged. "Just curious." The silence stretched again, just long enough for her to shift her weight and glance toward the exit. "Ready to go?" she asked, already grabbing her coat. I followed her without speaking, and we walked toward the parking garage in a kind of loaded silence. She talked about the party, the playlist, how the cake was dry. All the usual fluff she fills the air with when she doesn't want to talk about what matters. I nodded at all the right times, even smiled once or twice, but my mind was somewhere else entirely. I couldn't stop thinking about Maddie. Her face, her voice, the way she bolted like she knew something bad was coming. Was she telling the truth? Or trying to stir drama? And then there was Clara. The lie about stepping out. The delay in her reply. The silent message bubbles. And something else, something I hadn't even noticed until now. There was a faint red mark on the side of her neck. Not a bruise. Not a scratch. Just a tiny line. Barely visible unless you were looking for it. I hadn't been looking for it. Until now. The drive home was quiet in the way a car gets quiet when both people are lying. She talked about how the office decorations looked better this year, how they'd switched caterers, how someone spilled Prosecco on the server rack and almost knocked out the Wi-Fi. I made the appropriate noises. A chuckle here. Oh wow there. But inside my head, I was replaying every second from the hallway. Every flicker of her expression. Every word she just said. That red mark on her neck. It pulsed in my mind like a warning light. I didn't bring it up right away. I wanted to watch her act normal a little longer. Wanted to see how many layers of fiction she'd wrap around herself before I poked the first hole. When we got home, she went straight into the bedroom to take off her makeup. I stayed in the kitchen, pretending to scroll through my phone. But really, I was listening. I heard the water running, drawers opening and closing, the faint click of her perfume bottle. All part of her evening ritual, except she never puts perfume on at night. That's what did it for me. When she came out, dressed in an oversized t-shirt and fuzzy socks, I was leaning against the counter, still staring at my screen. I didn't look up when I said it. "You don't usually wear perfume to sleep." She froze for just a second, then laughed. "Oh, yeah, I guess I forgot I sprayed it earlier. Habit, I guess." Another lie. She never forgets things like that. Clara lives for details. She corrects me if I misquote a movie. She notices when I buy the wrong brand of almond milk. So no, she didn't forget. She covered something up. I finally looked at her. She was already walking toward the couch, like she couldn't get away from the conversation fast enough. "You're quiet tonight," she said, flipping on the TV. "Did something happen?" I tilted my head. "You tell me." She glanced back at me. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I think you know." A beat passed. Then she let out a sharp sigh and muted the TV. "Look, if you're going to start some jealous rant about Elliot, don't. Seriously, nothing happened." I wasn't yelling. I wasn't accusing. But her voice had already jumped to defense mode. And that told me more than her words ever could. "I never mentioned Elliot," I said softly. Silence. She blinked. I watched the flicker of panic pass behind her eyes. Just a trace, but enough to send a rush of heat through my chest. Her voice dropped an octave. Okay, what do you want me to say? Tell me why you lied about being in his office. She rolled her eyes. God, are you serious right now? Dead serious. Another pause. Another crack. I saw her weighing whether to deny it again or lean into something more palatable. A softened version of the truth. We were just talking, she finally said. In private. About a possible role change. Something he doesn't want to announce yet. In his office. With the door closed. Yes. And your shoes off? That landed like a slap. Her face changed. Not to guilt, but something colder. She folded her arms and said nothing. I pushed just a little further. Maddie heard a thud, like someone hitting the desk, or someone being pushed against it. Her eyes widened just a fraction, but it was there. I don't know what she thinks she heard, Clara said, her voice suddenly controlled, rehearsed. But I was never touched. And I didn't touch him. Interesting choice of words, never touched. Not nothing happened. Not you're overreacting. Just a denial that tiptoed around the real question. I walked over and sat across from her. The space between us felt cavernous now. Tell me something, Clara. If I hadn't gone to that hallway, if I hadn't been near his office, would you have told me any of this? She looked at me with something that resembled pity. I didn't want to hurt you, she whispered. That wasn't an answer. That was a wound dressed up as mercy. She stood and walked toward the hallway, stopping just before the bedroom door. Then, without turning around, she said, I think we should sleep in separate rooms tonight. And just like that, the silence between us became a wall. I didn't sleep that night. Not in the literal sense. I did close my eyes at some point, and time passed, but my mind never shut off. I laid there in the guest room, staring at the ceiling, trying to remember when the shift had started. Not tonight. Not at the party. That much I was sure of now. This thing, whatever it was, had roots. And I'd been too busy playing the role of the agreeable husband to notice how deep they ran. There were moments, tiny, stupid things, that started to click into place like puzzle pieces from the wrong box finally snapping together. The 3-day work trip to Seattle that got extended last minute. The way she stopped asking me to pick her up from the office. Her sudden obsession with locking her phone, even in the house. At the time, I had told myself not to jump to conclusions. That marriage was built on trust. That she deserved privacy, not paranoia. But trust, I realized now, is only noble when it's not being used against you. Around 4:30 a.m., I got out of bed and padded silently into the living room. Her purse was still there, hanging on the chair. I stared at it like it was some sacred artifact, humming with all the answers I wasn't allowed to ask for. I know what you're thinking. Don't go through her stuff. It's a line you're not supposed to cross. But then again, she had already crossed several. So I crossed mine. I opened the purse gently, careful not to make a sound. Inside was the usual, a pack of gum, hand lotion, keys, receipts. Her phone wasn't there. She must have taken it to the bedroom. But at the very bottom, almost hidden beneath a folded scarf, was a hotel key card. No logo. No room number. Just a blank, black strip and a small corner chipped like it had been shoved in and out of too many locks. I stared at it for a long time. This wasn't from tonight. The office party hadn't been at a hotel. And Clara hadn't traveled anywhere this week. Not that I knew of, at least. I slid it into my pocket and put everything back exactly the way I found it. When morning came, she was already gone. No note. No text. Just gone. Her side of the bed looked untouched. I sat in the kitchen with a cold cup of coffee, staring at my phone. I wanted to call her, but I knew she wouldn't pick up. And even if she did, I wasn't sure what I'd say. Hey, I found your mysterious hotel key. Mind explaining that over breakfast? Instead, I called the office. Pretended to be someone else. Told the front desk I found a key in the parking lot and wanted to return it. Asked which hotel it belonged to. It took 2 tries, but eventually, someone recognized it. The Belridge Hotel. Downtown. 10 minutes from her office. I thanked them and hung up. Belridge. That wasn't some cheap roadside inn. It was upscale. The kind of place you book when you want to impress someone. Or hide something. I stared at the name on my screen, then at the key card on the table. My gut twisted again, not with suspicion this time, but with a horrifying clarity. She hadn't been with Elliot just tonight. This had been going on longer. Carefully. Quietly. Like a second life built in the cracks of the first. And the worst part? I had let it happen. I had been so eager to believe everything was fine that I ignored every flashing red light. I swallowed every doubt, smiled through every uneaten dinner, and brushed off hug. But not anymore. I pocketed the keycard, and I made a decision. I was going to the Belridge Hotel. Not to confront her, not yet, but to confirm the one thing she'd never say out loud. The Belridge Hotel sat on the corner of a quiet street, hiding behind tall hedges and understated signage, the kind of place where secrets didn't just go unnoticed, they were expected. Everything about it screamed discretion. The valet barely made eye contact as I pulled up and handed him my keys with a weak smile, trying to keep my breathing steady. I didn't have a plan. That became obvious as soon as I stepped through the glass doors and into the soft jazz and marble. I had walked into the belly of something, but I had no idea how to start cutting it open. The woman at the front desk looked up from her screen and smiled politely. Checking in. No, I said too fast. Actually, I think I dropped this outside yesterday. I pulled the key card from my pocket, holding it up between two fingers like some cursed object I didn't want to touch. She leaned forward, squinting at it. Room number? I'm not sure, I said. My wife. I think she stayed here. I just wanted to check if she left anything behind. The lies stumbled out of me, unconvincing, but the clerk only nodded and typed something into her terminal. I hated how easy it was. Name? Clara Withrow, I said. My voice cracked halfway through it. She tapped the keyboard again, then paused. Yes, she said. She checked out 2 days ago. 2 days. 2 days ago, she told me she'd stayed late for a team offsite. Said they had client meetings, too much to do, and she'd crash at her coworker's condo near the river. Said it so casually, I didn't even question it. I even offered to drop off dinner. She told me not to bother. And was she alone? I asked, trying to play it off as a joke. She tends to leave her charger behind, so if anyone found it. The woman raised her brow slightly. Sorry, I'm not authorized to share guest information. Right? I said, nodding. Of course. She started to type again, and I began to back away. My hands were sweating. I could feel the keycard burning in my pocket like it was radioactive. I turned, walked toward the elevator, not to go up, but just to buy myself a few seconds to think. And that's when I saw him. Elliot. He was standing in the bar, half turned away from me, a glass in hand, phone pressed to his ear. Laughing. Casual. Relaxed. Like this was just another Thursday morning. Like nothing about any of this mattered. I froze. He hadn't seen me yet. I ducked behind a decorative pillar near the lobby's lounge, heart pounding so loudly I thought someone might actually hear it. I watched him hang up and glance toward the elevators, still smiling. And then he did something that nearly dropped me to my knees. He pulled out a room key card from his pocket, identical to the one I found, and tucked it into his wallet, just as the elevator dinged open in front of him. He stepped inside. Alone. I waited 10 full seconds before moving again. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to steady myself against a chair. I sat down in the lounge, trying to make it look casual, but nothing felt casual anymore. Everything inside me was boiling. I didn't know if I wanted to follow him or throw something at the wall. But more than that, I didn't know who I was angrier at. Elliot? For being exactly who I suspected? Or Clara? For lying so well that I'd believed her even when I shouldn't have? Maybe it was me. Maybe the real betrayal was mine, pretending I hadn't seen this coming. Pretending love could survive on crumbs. I sat there for what felt like hours, replaying every conversation from the last 6 months, every missing hour, every weird mood. Every night, she came home, too tired to talk. It all fit. It always fit. The only question left was whether I could live with it. And that answer scared me more than anything. Because the longer I sat there, the more I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted clarity. And I was going to get it, even if it broke me. I didn't follow him. I wanted to. God, I wanted to so badly. I wanted to storm up to that elevator, push every button, pound on every door until I found the one that still smelled like her perfume. I wanted to catch them in the act, scream until something shattered, demand an explanation that would never come. But instead, I sat there. And for the first time in months, I let the silence answer the question I'd been too scared to ask. It wasn't just about Elliot, or the lies, or even the hotel key. It was about the years I'd spent making myself small, easy, safe. The way I'd swallowed every doubt to keep the peace. The way I'd confused being passive for being kind. I hadn't just lost her. I'd lost myself. And in that moment, sitting in that polished hotel lounge with a cold cup of coffee and shaking hands, something inside me let go. Not in a broken way, in a freeing way. I stood up, tucked the keycard back into my pocket, and walked out the front doors into the morning light. The city felt sharper, realer. I didn't have a dramatic confrontation or a shouting match in the lobby. I didn't need it, because this wasn't her story anymore. It was mine. By the time I got home, Clara was already back. She sat at the kitchen table, hair tied up, face washed clean. When she looked up and saw me, her expression shifted. Not guilty, not scared, but tired. Like she knew the curtain had dropped, and there was no point pretending anymore. I placed the hotel key gently on the table. "I'm not going to ask what happened," I said. "I already know." She nodded slowly, tears building in her eyes. "I didn't mean for it to get this far." I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, just out of exhaustion. "I know. We didn't fight. We didn't throw blame around like grenades. We just sat there. Two people who had run out of lies. And then, I did the most unexpected thing of all. I forgave her. Not because she deserved it, but because I did. I deserved to move forward without carrying her betrayal like a weight chained to my ankle. I deserved to wake up one day without wondering if I was enough. I deserved to be more than someone else's background character. That night, I packed a bag. Not out of anger, but out of grace. I got an apartment the next week. Small, sunny, quiet. I started reading again. I made friends at the office I used to avoid. I went to therapy. I took long walks with no destination. I even started sketching, something I hadn't done since college. Turns out I'm still terrible at drawing hands, but I'm getting better. As for Clara, we're not enemies. We still talk sometimes. Closure is messy, but we're figuring it out. She apologized again. Meant it. Maybe someday she'll grow from this too. But me? I already have. The truth didn't destroy me. It opened the door I should have walked through years ago. And this time, I didn't hesitate.